Hello and welcome to Tiny Blue Games. My name, of course, is Cesar Chris, and today we're talking about Wildstar. So, as many of you might know, or some of you do and some of you don't, which would be many, might. What a weird way to start this. I made a video about Wildstar queue times about a week ago, probably a bit more since I'm lazy, and I'm lazy, whatever. And I saw so much growth in that video compared to any other Wildstar video I've made in a long time that you guys have inspired me to make a lot more videos. I was planning to do it anyways, but like the amount of interest in Wildstar and such just online on YouTube and people searching up the game to see if they want to get into it is incredible. And if you're playing Wildstar, I'm sure you're very happy to hear that. If you're not playing Wildstar, you guys should know this. There's a ton of you guys watching these videos, seeing if it's time to come back. And well, this is kind of what this video is going to be about. This video is going to show you all the updates and all the drops that you might have missed if you left for a while. I personally left for about a month during the month of December, and I missed a bit. And I know it. You want to know exactly what's happened when you come back, because I came back just before drop 4, and I was so impressed to hear all the changes that were going to happen, and I want to share that feeling with you guys. So what I have on the screen right now, or what I hopefully have on the screen right now if I figured it out, is a bunch of annotations that will skip you forward in this video and start you at a specific drop or update and sort of catch you up after that point. So what I'd suggest to you is find the point, I guess, where you left off and click on that, and then you can get fully caught up from then up till now. And I'm going to go all the way to drop 5, which hasn't happened yet. It's on the PTR, or some elements are. I'm not really going to visually show you about it, but I'm going to talk about what items are on the PTR and what's sort of been discussed about being in drop 5. Because I know changes can happen to that. So I don't want to get anyone's hopes super up about something and then just rip it away. It's just not fair. So the very first date I'm going to start with, and if you want to go through the entire video, which I highly recommend, is the October 14th, 2014 update, which was the day the mega server was born, the Big Bang, if you will. It wasn't a drop by any means, but it was a full day of patching, or a long time of patching anyways. I remember staying on the forums and just watching everyone's reaction to it as it happened, but it was a big day, and we're going to start there. So I'll see you there. Alright, so our first stop on our timeline of updates is October 14th, 2014. And as I mentioned before, this is when the mega server was conceived, I guess. And it makes a very good starting point for our timeline, as that's kind of when the realms as we know it are born. And, you know, from there until now, we'll cover all the updates. So what really happened? Well, we'll do a bit of brief history here. At the start of the game, there's two regions. There's North America and there's European. And then in both of those regions, there's either PvP servers or PvE servers. At the start of the game, there was multiple PvE servers and PvP servers for both regions. But what the mega server did is for each region, it made it so that there was only one PvP server and one PvE server. And I'll go here and show you. So for the North American region, which is the one I'm talking about, I'm not going to cover a ton about the European one. It's pretty much just different names, but the same concept. So you can look the names up if you want to. But we've got the Entity PvE server and the Warhound PvP server. And when that first happened, there was still quite a few people playing on the PvP server. However, there's now not many people playing on the PvP server, and I've talked about this in my first video I made on queue times, and where you want to like play, but you want to be on the PvE server in either of the regions. You want to be on the PvE server. There's just not that many. As long as you if you want to be a lone wolf and like not see anyone, you can go on the PvP server. There's no problem with that, and there is a few people there. There's probably like 1 to 2 guilds and stuff like that, but the PvE server is where it's happening. If you go to the PvE server, you're gonna have a regular game experience. So that's my 2 cents on that. What else happened during this update? Well, if you have a character that you had created before this update, and I'm pretty sure characters below a certain level that weren't played for a significant amount of time. So some of your alts might have been deleted. They didn't delete anyone too high, though, from my recollection. For sure, no one above like 30 or something, I don't think. But your level 50s will for sure be there anyways. And what you have to do is you have to change the name of your character to a two-name name. So, you know, my character used to be called Seesaw, so I had to make it Sir Seesaw. Or you can make a last name. I prefer the prefix or suffix, but, you know, you can do whatever you want. Anyways, we'll move on to our next part of the updates. Zoom. Alright, so the next update on October 23rd, 2014, they made it so the final boss of the first raid, which is Genetic Archives, or GA for short, you'll see in game, drops the Pristine Genesis Key. And what this is it's a full attunement. That's right, you heard me. It's a full attunement for the raids, and I'm almost 100% sure that it drops every time you kill it. And it can be sold. You see it being sold in Thade fairly often. I've actually never seen it on the auction house. I don't know if it can. It must be able to be listed on the auction house, but you see most people whispering about it in the trade chat because it is a fairly expensive item. Generally on the North American server entity, I see it going for around 80 plat. At the lowest, I'd say maybe 60 plat. So it's a fairly hefty thing. Guilds will tend to sell them as a way to make money. Like, I mean, you saw in WoW how if a guild started clearing a raid regularly, they'd start making money by either running people through it or selling the BOEs. You know, the same kind of shit every game has. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? The absolute hardcore people will obviously say it's a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that it allows more people to get into the raids. Ultimately, it's not a big enough change to really hurt the game or really benefit the game. Like it's not a huge deal. It's just another cool drop that you can get, and I think it's cool that there's like those kind of luxury items in the game. Anyways, we'll move on now. All right, so on October 28th, 2014, they enabled it so that you could have free realm transfers at any point during, well, any time really. And you can see here there's a free realm transfer button right there. All you do is click on the character you want, and this is from your character select screen, obviously. You can click on the service and it can change you to the Warhound PvP server. Since I'm on the PvE server, it would transfer me there. It usually doesn't take more than like 5 to 10 minutes. It says it can take up to 24 hours or something like that, but it's never happened. I think there is a cooldown on how often you can switch back and forth. Something tells me it's like a week or something like that. But anyways, the other big thing like historically what happened when they introduced this is that the population difference for PvE and PvP servers that's what was the final nail in the coffin really for the PvP servers, and we noticed them all start to empty out very quickly to the PvE server. So it kind of did wrong that way, but it's a super nice feature because most games will charge you for this kind of service, and it's a great help for anyone stuck on the PvP server still. So, you know, I think it's a good idea anyways. It's not this that necessarily killed the PvP server, it's the lack of incentive to play on the PvP server. So that's my thoughts on it. All right, we'll move to the next update. All right, so on November 10th, 2014, we had the third content drop for Wildstar, which was called the Mysteries of Genesis Prime. So this is one of the bigger updates for Wildstar. It was actually the biggest update that had ever happened at the time because it was the very first quarterly drop, I think, that we experienced. And what happened? Well, the biggest thing is, I guess there was a huge move ahead in the story of Wildstar. You learned a lot of lore. There was some cinematics to watch, which you could still watch probably on their website or by doing the events in this zone. You learn a lot about the main antagonist sort of in Wildstar, which is the mysterious creature called the Entity. that has an interesting relationship with Druisa. You know, there's a whole story there that you can learn about through that. But there was also a lot of quality of life and different updates that were added during this content drop too. So we'll break it down. First off is the new zone that you get, which is called the Defile. It's right attached to Blighthaven, so you have to take like the longest taxi in the world to get there if you want to do that. But it's right here. It's called the Defile. It's a pretty big zone. There's a lot of different events in it, including the Lightspire, which you still see lots of people do today. They're pretty big world events. There's a few 20-man events, 5-man events, and there's solo stuff as well. There's obviously a rep vendor that sells some pretty decent epics, as well as amp upgrades and all that. All the regular zone stuff. I mean, the zone was great. It wasn't super, impressive. It wasn't a huge... It's visually quite stunning, but it's not game-changing. One of the biggest features that they changed that actually helps players play all aspects of the game, and it's great quality of life upgrade, was the rune system overhaul. So we have our crafting stations here, which are now everywhere pretty much across the world, which is already a big update. As you see, I'm at a quest hub here, and there's one right there. So I'll open my items. This is my tanking gear, which isn't great, but right away when I put my mouse over here, if you weren't, haven't played since this update, the actual runes will look different. They're nice, nice and, I don't know, they're not really different, but they look nicer. The colors are more specific and all that. It's just cleaned up, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But the real changes come when you actually go into the runing process. So before the update, there used to be a huge issue as far as how many rune slots a epic might have. When it dropped, I think it had a chance to be level, I don't know, 61, is that what we'll say they are? Item level 61 epics would have anywhere between 3 and 5, I think, rune slots. And this was an issue because you could be trying to get an epic forever, and then you could get a 3, and it was like significantly worse than 1 of 5, or at least you thought it was, you felt it was. It was not good that way. So what they've done now is that any epic that drops now will have 4 rune slots on them, and they can be upgraded to a 5th, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And any items that you had, so if you had a whole bunch of epics before you played, you can keep upgrading them until they have all the way up to 5. So if you had 3 or whatever, you can go all the way until you get to 5 just from adding. And now we're going to get into adding here. So I'll do it on my my epic gun here. To add, you just click the add button, and you need some Elden Runic modules, and we'll get into all the ways you can get that, which have increased past the updates, in future updates that I'll talk about, but we'll talk about this. there's a lot of stuff in this patch, so we're going to spend a little time on this one. So anyways, to add a rune slot, you just push yes, and boom, you get a random rune slot that you'll unlock, just like any other rune slot. So there's that. You can also change or re-roll the color of a rune slot with a charged with one of these guys, the Runic Elemental Flux, and they go for about 2 plat on our server right now. It's a bit more expensive to do this. If it was your best in slot item for a long time, it would be worth it. If it's an item that you're gonna probably get rid of eventually, I wouldn't suggest it. There's a bunch of ways you can get these as well. It's crafted, I'm pretty sure, is what it is. But you'll find them on the auction house for sure. As for these little guys, oh, I already did that one. These little guys, you'll find these in dungeons. They'll drop from from bosses. You'll find them from quest rewards sometimes. You'll find them from random bags you open. You'll find them especially from PvP bags now, actually. There's a lot of them dropping from that. It's a great way to get them, in my personal opinion. You'll also find them from... I don't know, from regular veteran dungeons. That used to be a huge issue, actually, when the patch came out. Everyone was farming them from regular like Storm Talon, because they could do the run in 2 minutes, and there was a chance to get 6 of them, or 0 of them, obviously. But that's how people used to get them. But I think it's more worthwhile getting them the intended way now. You can also buy them for prestige now. I don't know, like from the very most recent update, you can buy them from Prestige from the Battleground vendors. So there's all that. I think that's pretty much all I want to talk on the rune system. It works quite well now. I'm very happy with how it looks and how it works. The crafting I don't think got changed too much. So there's that. We'll move on to some other things here. I just got like a little list of everything that was switched because there was a ton of stuff. You could buy rental mounts now, I think starting at level 6. So you don't have to do the very starter zones without a mount anymore, which is a big help. Speaking of quality of life, as far as like leveling goes, you could skip the on the ship tutorial, which is from like level 1 to 3, and about 20 minutes of starting gameplay that you don't have to do anymore if you've done it 1,000 times. So you can skip that. The quest monetary rewards have been increased by 140%. Plus you can sell items to vendors for a lot more. So they just want to up the amount of money that's going into the game that way. We talked about the defile. Oh, we didn't talk about one thing in the defile. There is a solo instance that's fully voiced. It's called the Omnicore 1, and it's a continuation of the story. It's a really like great lore-wise and very cool to do for your first time. I think now it offers Elder Gems when you complete it. I actually don't do it very much, but I know a lot of people do still do it and do enjoy it a lot. It drops, you know, some items. I don't think it drops anything super good as far as gearing goes. It might drop costumes as well, but I'd definitely check it out if you haven't ever done it, because it's definitely worth it then. We've got skip tutorial, Cosmontre, and our last point here, which is actually pretty big, is the Bronze Age of Glory, and this has to do with the attunement. And there was a lot of complaints about the attunement taking too long, so this is kind of addressing that in the fact that they made it so for the dungeon part of the attunement, you only have to get bronze in each dungeon now, which was huge at the time because it was really hard to actually get silver, especially in Sanctuary of the Sword Maiden. I mean, a lot of people didn't have that, so this was a big help for them. They also made it so that the world bosses rezzed a lot faster, and you could do it anytime in your progression. So it was based off achievement. So, you know, if you killed world bosses while, you know, leveling up, I think even, well, for sure, any point during your attunement, it would count to the world boss stage when you got there, because you just had to have the achievement. So yeah, those are the big things that happened. Just a brief bit of history. The drop was implemented. A lot of people are excited. However, there was a ton of bugs with this drop, as it was the first like really big patch. There was some game crippling bugs for a few days. Like, it was pretty bad, some stuff. Anyways, they did recover it, but it's after this that most people left the game between drop 3 and drop 4. About a month after drop 3, I think, is when I left, and that's when the game hit rock bottom. There was no queues popping. There was no reason really to do dungeons, because there was a lot of people playing. There was a lot of people who were raiding and didn't want to do dungeons because there was no reason, and people who wanted to raid and stuff, but they weren't really good enough to pull themselves through the dungeons. And then there was also people who just weren't at all interested in all this. But it is where the population, I'd say, hit rock bottom, and after which we've been on a steady growth from that point. So I'll move on to the next drop, as this one's already been. All right. So you guys thought the last drop was quite big. I thought it was quite big. I think this drop's even bigger, and this drop itself was the reason I came back to Wildstar. So if there was one that's going to convince you, I'm hoping it's this. And it's called the Proto Games Initiative, and it happened on February 3rd, 2015. And I gotta say, this is the most amount of features that I've wanted for a long time. So the first thing we're going to talk about is I'm in a central hub here for that was introduced in the update. There's one in Thade and one in Ilium. The one in Thade's in the Traverse Tunnels here. The one in Thade is sort of across from the auction house and all that. It's pretty easy to see. It's very red. It kind of looks like this. People are more spread out though, but it's very cool to see. So what we have here, and I'll just talk about it first, is you've got a daily quest for each, for PvP, for veteran ship hands, which we'll talk about in one moment, for adventures, and for dungeons. As I promised, we'll talk about veteran ship hands first. So what this update really did was overhaul how PvE works. Before, what happened is you got to level 50 and you did adventures, and then there was a pretty big jump between adventures and veteran dungeons, especially some of the veteran dungeons, and that was really hurting a lot of people. Obviously you do your attunement and all that, but this is more focused on gearing and it fixed itemization, which is or at least put some big steps towards fixing itemization, which is great to see. But veteran ship hands are a new thing that have been added to the looking for group system. So you go to ship hands here. You can do regular ship hands while you're leveling, and they're pretty good as well. Or you can do veteran ones. You could do a random one, which gives you some XP, some money, and some ship handbags. They're a really good way to make money as well as renown, and I'll show you why that is. I have an issue saying renown for some reason. I'm sorry if I missay it at some point during this. But we've got, I think, 7 or 6 veteran ones here, which is awesome. They're all very different and all feel quite cool. They're space related, as they're called ship hands. But you'll get a lot of renown from it, and you can get a daily quest here to do a specific one. It'll give you some bonuses. But with the renown, you'll buy your first set of gear that you'll get once you hit 50. And this is some pretty good gear to start with. Like it's significantly worth buying this stuff to upgrade yourself from questing blues or greens even. You can also get a amp point here, which is pretty easy to get. You need to get gold on all the veteran ship hands, which is pretty easy. It's a lot easier than a lot of other things you have to do. Next, we have the adventure. The adventure system itself wasn't changed at all, but there is a venture gear seller now, which does it for renown as well. It's a fair bit more expensive. You also have to get a bronze medal on all veteran adventures to buy from it, but it's a good step up as well, stat-wise and all that. And then we'll talk about next the new currency, which is not in that area, which is glory. Now, glory is a currency that's awarded for veteran dungeons and for raids. For veteran dungeons, you get some as far as killing bosses and for finishing the dungeon. From raids, I think you get it for the same kind of stuff. But the biggest interesting thing about it that you should take note of is that if you queue for a random veteran dungeon now, you will actually get some extra glory. I think it's 100 glory for doing random. And this is one of the biggest things they could have done to help the entire system of PvE in this game, is make it worthwhile for people to queue in. Because I'll show you what glory can buy you in a second here, but an extra 100 for doing random is worth it for most people. For most people. Some people won't, and that's still fine. But let's go to dungeon gear here. You can buy blue stuff of glory, but what I'd recommend doing is you can buy epic stuff for glory. Yes, you can now buy epics. It works very much like the system in WoW, where you used to get valor points or whatever it was. The biggest difference about this is that you have to actually complete a few things before you can get it. You have to do Veteran Skullcano, Veteran Kelvaroth, and Veteran Stormtalon's Lair, and you also need to complete regular Sanctuary of the Sword Maiden. Now, right now, you actually have to do it regular. Like, the Veteran one won't count for this. However, that being said, I could see them changing it at some point in the future so that Veteran counts as well. So I'll sort of keep you guys updated if that does change at some point here. But you can get all those. You can get a mount. You can get costume pieces for a significant amount, but they are very different costumes than you've ever seen. You got some sort of robotic kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. Some Protostar stuff, as it is called the Protostar Initiative, and we'll get into why it's called that. There's so much in this drop, guys. It really is. And some glory rewards. Oh, you could get some Elden Rune framings from here too. That's another way to get it. It's kind of the more expensive way to get it, so I wouldn't really recommend doing that. What else can you buy? You can buy raid gear. Well, we'll hop into the raid gear section. So, oh, this is the most epic stuff, I think. Yeah, we want to start with this. So you can buy raid gear with glory as well. And now don't get all upset that the game's too easy now, because you actually have to kill, for all this stuff, you have to kill the first boss of the first raid. So this would be your intro raid gear. And then for Day Escape, you have to kill the first boss of that first raid too. So it's not like they're just handing it to people by any means. Just to be clear, like, you actually have to do something to get it. as well as collect, like, because you're starting to get up there as far as how much these things are starting to cost. And then we'll talk about the raid sort of changes. Each raid boss, I think now, and I don't raid much, so I'm sorry if I get this wrong, drops a token for a armor type, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's for armor type and not for class that the tokens drop for. But when you have the token, you can go back and you can get your class armor now with it. And now this should remind you a lot of WoW's kind of armor system for raids. Anyways, I'm just showing you what my gear looks like, but it looks pretty cool. So I'm really a fan of this system. So you get to look quite cool like that. And it's very simple. You just have a chance to get the token from the boss, and that's that. So that's pretty much how gearing works now. I hope I covered that pretty well as far as the PvE is concerned. Because PvP wasn't super touched in this patch, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. What else do we have to talk about? Well, I have a list once again. We talked about veteran ship hands. We talked about the overhaul of currency. Oh, you can now remember your authenticator. Like, you had to type your authenticator in every time you logged in. You can now remember an IP address for a week. I know that's not a huge thing, but it's kind of convenient when you're logging in and out a lot, especially if you get deceived and try to log in again. Anyways, it's a nice quality of life change. There's the new looking for group incentive that we talked about. The questing from 40 or from 15 or from 6 to 49, sorry for all the numbers, there's a lot of numbers on this page, from 6 to 49 has been increased by 15%, so it's 15% easier to get to level 50 than it used to be, which is great. All right, the big things, yeah, we'll talk about the new dungeons, 2 of them. There's the Proto Games sort of training dungeon, which is only, where is it here? You know what, I might not have done it on this person, but you do unlock it here. You have to go to it in the world, and it's pretty easy to find in the world from what I remember. There should be one of the starting areas. There will be quests that lead you to it, so it's not incredibly hard to find at any rate. But anyways, it's a level 10 dungeon that's been added, and it's really good for XP, which is huge because Wildstar's dungeons haven't been known to be very good for XP. So this is a big step in the right direction. It teaches a lot about the mechanics of the game, which is also a very big plus, because a lot of people have issues with some of the new mechanics that they don't see in every game. So there's that. Overall, it's quite a fun dungeon, so I'd recommend doing it. The Proto Game Academy, I'm pretty sure it's what it's called. You can queue in for it as a level 10 anyways, so I'd recommend being a tank or a healer in the queue, or well, like both tank and DPS or whatever, because you'll get in a lot quicker. The other dungeon that was added was the, I don't know why I keep on pushing the wrong buttons, the Veteran Ultimate Proto Games. And now this is some tough dungeon. There's a bunch of rooms, and it sort of selects rooms for you to do. It's like you're on the Proto Games TV show or sort of game show, and you and your party are trying to complete objectives. It's a fun, loose dungeon that's difficult. It's very different from all the other dungeons, and it also adds a lot of epics. There's a lot of best in slot before you start raiding gear from there that drops quite regularly. That's something I should add, actually. Both the Proto Games, Ultimate Proto Games or whatever, the level 51, and the Sanctuary of the Sword Maiden have been updated, or now drop a ton of epics compared to what they used to do. Especially Sanctuary of the Sword Maiden. It drops a epic guaranteed per boss as well, per mini boss, and at the end as well, so you're getting tons, which is perfect because it's now actually kind of worth running it, versus before where you got in and you were like, if you didn't need the attunement, there was no reason for you to be there. Now it's worth gearing from that. Though I'd recommend running both of those dungeons a fair bit before you start raiding, both to get you used to the difficulty and to gear you up. So there's that. Oh, there's weekly Elder Gem quests, which you can get from a board right here. I already have mine. There's one for PvE, which would be doing dungeons and adventures. You get more depending on how long the actual dungeon you're doing. So like if you're doing the Sanctuary of Sword raid, and it's almost going to finish it in one go. There's one for PvP, which is just winning. You also get some for losing battlegrounds, but you get more for winning, I'm pretty sure. And there's one for daily quests for people who like questing and such. And this will award you 40 Elder Gems that will not count to your weekly cap. This will be over top of that. So you can buy, or you can get 180, I guess, per week now of that. So it adds on top of that. That's the important thing to note anyways. All right, so the chop shop, if you go to your sort of dying person that you used to go to, this interface will this is actually getting changed, not the chop shop itself, but the dying and costume wardrobe in drop 5, which I'll talk about in a second. There's so many changes coming into this game. It's just so exciting, guys. But if you go to your character chop shop, this is where you can, here, I'll take off my helmet too. You can actually go back and change how your character looks. You can change hair color to whatever you want. You can change skin color. You can change eye color, facial hair, body style. You can change all this. It does cost in-game currency. It does not cost anything outside of the game. So that's great. You can do it at any time, as many times as you want. You have to be here, which is the only drawback, but it's a great system. A lot of people are excited about this. I'd check it out if you don't like how you look. Another thing that's been changed is Datascape is now a 20-man raid, right? Pretty big change. I mean, it's not like anything new added to the game, but I'll sort of give you some reasoning for it. A lot of people are having troubles finding enough people to do the 40-man Datascape. It was hard to get that many people. It might be easier with more population in the game now that it's growing, but that being said, what Carbine said is if they have 20-man raids for everything, it's going to be a lot easier for them to develop raids quicker, because that's just sort of the constant amount of people they have to have it like set for. So that's where they're coming from for that, and I think it's a good idea, because then the same team that just finished the first raid can get into the next one. They don't have to find a bunch of new players and, you know, sort of sync up with those guys. It's just it's not as nice that way. So those are the big changes. Oh, and I guess the other big change, and I'll just bring up some pictures here quick. All right, so we're kind of done with our big updates. I mean, I'll talk about drop 5 a bit, but drop 4 and 3 were the big ones to talk about. So if you're starting to get tired of listening, you're almost done here. So on March 3rd, 2015, they did a update. This wasn't a drop or anything, but what the update did, and it was huge, is they made it so you could buy all PvP gear without rating. Like, we're in the arena gear right now. You can get the top arena gear just for prestige now. So you're thinking, you know, all right, what does this do, Chris? Well, this actually made it so that people PvP'd again. That's right. There's PvP queues in Wildstar again, which is huge. Huge. Now this is a intermediate step, like a very small step in PvP fixes. In fact, it's not a step towards where they're going, like, it's just a fix, really, so that people would PvP until drop 5, because drop 5 is supposed to see some pretty big PvP fixes. I won't get into details about that too much until I talk about the next drop in a second here. But anyways, you can buy everything with prestige now. So like if you look at my guy, I've got full on epic PvP gear now, which looks pretty hot. I'm pretty happy with it. As well as they've upped the amount of prestige you can get in total to, I think, like 10,000 or above. No, I think it's like 10,000. Another awesome thing you can get, though, is if you go here, you can buy, not in general, in consumable, you can buy Elden Rune fragment or modules, which isn't huge. You can buy signs and fragments, but you can buy all the amp points and ability points you need. Every single one of them can now be bought through PvP, versus just like the 2 of them and the 1 of them that used to be. So what this update does is it balances the gear a bit, because people used to have to go against purple, like just the absolute top end PvP in their blue stuff, and that wasn't fun for anyone. So now everyone can have purples, and it feels a lot more fair that way. As well as it's given incentive to PvP as you can get this new purple gear, as well as you can get all your amps and ability ability points from that. And I'd almost say this is the easiest way to get it, even for PvEers, which is making a bunch of PvEers who didn't care about PvP start to care about PvP. So that's really cool. Very good update, very good fix. Very happy to be doing PvP again. And we'll move to drop 5 now. Alright guys, so we're finally talking about drop 5. I know this has been a really long video, but it adds to the emphasis on how many updates there has actually been to this game in the last while. I know it's a while, but it's like a lot of updates and changes. So for drop 5, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you about the things that I think we can almost certainly say are going to be drop 5, then I'll talk about the things that are on the PTR or that Carbine's talked about. So for drop 5, we for sure are, I think, getting pets, and those are cosmetic pets, little minis that'll be beside you, like the little sheep guy and all that kind of stuff. You can get them from achievements, from drops, from lots of stuff. So pets, it's exciting for some. I'm pretty excited. We'll see how it turns out. We're for sure, I can almost say, well, there's articles on pets and there's articles on hollow wardrobe, which is a sort of dyeing and wardrobe system that you can do from your character anywhere in the game. I don't know if any of you have played Guild Wars 2, and I'm sure some of you have. It's going to sort of work very much how their wardrobe system works now, I think, from reading. I can't super say, I haven't been on the PTR much, but it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be a huge quality of life update, is what it's gonna, or change, I guess. So there's that. There's something that I'm super excited about that's called contracts, and this is gonna help the gearing system for PvE and PvP even more, and it's gonna be great for casual players in the sense that it's very quick bursts of activity that all add up to give you something nice. So if you don't have the time to spend, you know, an hour and a bit, or 2 hours or 3 hours running Sanctuary of the Sword Maiden with a pug group, you can do contracts, which is through Protostar, and they give you sort of a quest. It might be to run an adventure or something like that, or to kill something, or this is for PvE that I'm talking about right now. And you get a certain amount of points for that contract, and when you accumulate enough points, you get different prizes. The prizes do, in fact, include epic gear, costumes, all that. There's a bunch of stuff that it could include. They're not very specific on, but it could include epic gear for sure. PvP, very similar. You do battlegrounds, I'd assume, or any kind of PvP activity, maybe killing mass carriers or something like that, and you get rewards in the same sense. So I'm very excited about that. The contract hubs will be in the main cities, but you can also, there's a UI for it that you'll access from here, so you can check it out anywhere in the world. Another thing that they've talked about is PvP fixes, and there's possibly going to be season 2 of PvP starting drop 5. I'm not entirely sure about that though. One thing that is on the PTR that I can talk more about is the Exile versus Exile and Dominion versus Dominion battlegrounds. So there's going to be same faction battlegrounds, which to some sounds terrible because it kind of breaks a bit of lore. But when you think about it, they need to train against each other anyways. And the biggest thing it really does for us is it makes it so that because there's a bit of a population difference between exiles and dominions, it makes it so the exiles can get into queues even though there's, you know, so many of them in queue. They can get into queues a lot quicker because they can start to fight each other. So that's a huge thing that'll help the queues for PvP a fair bit. There's other PvP changes that might be coming that they've talked about at their town hall as well, sort of like their path of where they want to go with PvP, and that includes just a different kind of rating system, possibly rating floors, different way of gearing, all this different stuff. You can check it out on the website. They still have the list of all the PvP changes they wish to make, and some of them could be implemented on drop 5. I just can't say for sure about anything on drop 5, and I'm sure you guys understand that. There's going to be a new zone, hopefully, called Livian Bay. It's a level 50 area. It's a level 50 revamp of an area. Probably some daily quests and all that kind of stuff. New zone stuff. There's going to be a new adventure. Once again, hopefully there's going to be a new adventure. I don't know if it's going to for sure happen. But that should be really cool if it does happen. And another thing, there's a new boss in a box raid kind of thing. So a one boss raid situation. They had sort of these kind of things in WoW, if you remember, like the Onyxia fight or whatever. I think it's Onyxia that you fight, and that dragon in the cave that you just fight her. Anyways, it's a one boss kind of raid. I don't have a ton of details on that, but it also sounds pretty cool. Anyways, I'm sorry I couldn't give you a ton more information, but if you want more information, go read the PTR forums as well as the website and see if you can learn more about what's happening in Drop 5. I don't know if I said this at the start, but I'm thinking that Drop 5, and this is my prediction, that it's going to happen on May 3rd, 2015, as that would be exactly 3 months from the February update, but I'm not entirely sure. It'll happen on a Tuesday, so whatever Tuesday is close to that, I think. Anyways, thanks for staying with me all the way to the end of this video. I'm sure a bunch of you didn't watch the whole video. But if you did, I want to quickly ask, what was your favorite update, or what was the update that made you come back to the game? If you left, what made you come back? If you've been playing the whole time, what's your favorite change they've made that I might have mentioned? If I missed some updates or changes, do mention in the comments too. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you liked this, like it. If you have a comment about it or a suggestion for a future video, be sure to leave one. And of course, subscribe. I mean, only one of these has a beam of neon light going through it. Also, be sure to yell at us at your favorite social media website. We're always listening, but only if you yell. Thanks.